Kevin, what's going on, my man? How you feeling?
Feeling good. The Ravens coming off their bye week. I know they struggled 2 of the last 3 weeks, but I think everybody's hoping here in Baltimore it's going to be a nice reset for them. Obviously, starting this week here against the Giants.
I really don't like the way you said feeling good because you're playing the Giants this week after coming off that bye week. I remember when Lamar had some remarks after I guess the Philly loss, and he was like, "Well, I can't wait to play the Giants," and that blew up. You guys looking at this as a get right, get back game.
Yeah, and I think that's really how you have to imagine it for this Ravens team because look, first of all, the Ravens can't overlook this New York Giants team. They've done it before, and sometimes they've been known to either play down to competition or just not get up for teams that they should be able to beat. For example, the Raiders in week 2. That Raiders team has 2 wins. Gardner Minshew led them to a win. One of the wins is against the Ravens. So I feel like with this, the Ravens have a pretty brutal 3 game and 10-day stretch coming up here, starting with this Giants game on Sunday. I know that everybody's talking about how big of a blowout win this is going to be, and the Ravens are going to dominate, but they have to actually execute and perform. And what that means is getting out of your own way sometimes. The Ravens have been a very highly penalized team this season. They have sometimes dropped interceptions or they've turned the ball over. You can't make those mistakes even against a Giants team that laundry list of injuries it piles up seems like every single week for that Giants team. Those are still professional football players on the other side. You got to get it done.
Laundry list. I thought it was my kid's Christmas list. I'm sitting here looking at it like, wait, what? Yeah, man. I mean, I guess with the state of the Giants and where they're at right now, I kind of want to talk about Lamar because he's only lost to 2 NFC teams in his career, both NFC East teams, one being the Giants when they came back from down, 9, 10 points in that 2022 season when the Giants, I mean, the last time we went to the playoffs and stuff. I know Lamar's got the fragrance collection that he has coming out with, but do you feel as though this game is on him to get the Ravens back on course?
Him being one of their leaders, especially on the offensive side of the ball, I think it is on him to set a tone, but I think it's on the entire team to be able to get the job done. I think defensively, we've now heard of a closed door meeting that happened after the win against the Bengals on Thursday
Mm.
night, where there were a lot of hard truths shared in that meeting. And over the past 3 weeks since that meeting, Baltimore has the #1 pass defense in the NFL. Their run defense has been great. But I think we're going to see a rejuvenated Lamar Jackson on the offensive side of the ball. You mentioned how passionate and animated he was after that Philly loss at the podium. One of the more passionate post-game press conferences after a loss that we've seen from him here in Baltimore. Obviously, he shared that his mom had a couple of words for him on not running the ball as much and taking those opportunities. And Lamar, during his Wednesday availability before the game on Sunday here against the Giants, has said that he's antsy, he's ready to go. Nothing has changed since that Philly game, and he certainly is expecting to run the ball more, but
Yeah.
he's just going to play football. It's not about Lamar running the ball 25 times. Lamar's great with his arm, he's great with his legs, one of the best dual threat talents that really we've ever seen. But it's about in the game flow. If there's green grass available for you, it's great to let routes develop, but sometimes you just got to use your God given talent and go out there and get the job done. So I feel like for Lamar, we're going to see a more balanced effort from him, but I think that he has set the tone here with how passionate he was after that Eagles game, and I'm excited to see him back in action with, I guess this new Lamar Jackson that we're about to see.
Yeah, he hit us with the whole Bobby Boucher. Mama said to run the ball more, and I think that's what Giants fans are kind of, well, honestly, you know what? They're kind of open to it because there are some Giants fans who want the Giants to lose this game. So it's like, however, Lamar and these guys got to come in and get this W, they'll be okay with it. But on the flip side, I'm not one of those tankers. I'm not one of those people. I would like to see Shane Bowen's defense try and contain him as much as possible. And I'm hoping that it's like terrible weather at MetLife Stadium to kind of slow down this Ravens offense and force them to kind of kick field goals and to see if I can't believe I'm saying this, to see if Justin Tucker can beat the New York Giants. So I know I did kind of didn't hit you up to say we're talking about Justin Tucker, but are you a little worried when it comes to one of the greatest kickers of all time?
Yeah, I think there certainly has to be concern. Obviously, it kind of feels here in Baltimore like it's a hero falling in some way, shape, or form because he's been
Mm.
so good over the last decade plus, in my opinion. Yeah, best kicker of all time, but 70% or just above 70% field goal conversion percentage this season, by far the lowest of his career. And I mean, look, you look at some of these games, and the Ravens lose by 2 points in a game against Pittsburgh where Justin Tucker misses two field goals, and you lose by 5 to the Eagles where Justin Tucker misses three kicks. And there's direct correlation to that. It just feels like there's something going on with him. Earlier in the season, he shared it was a technique issue. He identified it. He figured it out. Obviously, here we are talking mid-December, and clearly it has not been figured out yet. I feel like at this point it has to be something mental with him where he's in his own head about things, where he's hooking all these balls to the left. And then on that last kick against Philadelphia, you can see him try to overcorrect to the right side, and it just sails on him wide right. Even the extra point with no pressure late in the game, he almost doinked off the upright again. So the thing at this point in the season is really there's nobody else available. I mean, really, who else are you trusting
Yeah.
who's on the free agent market? Maybe Randy Bullock, who obviously Giants fans are familiar with. He can come in and be a practice squad player. But at this point, I feel like it really is Justin Tucker or bust. If he turns it around, it's a great story. If he doesn't, well, maybe he loses you a playoff game. That's a tough blow. And then you have to have a serious conversation about what his career looks like in Baltimore after the season.
Yeah, I think it's kind of the same thing was going on with kind of Graham Gano right now. I know he's 6 for 8 on the season. He's had like one or two blocked on the year, but the injuries, here's a guy that we loved him because he was a giant killer when he was in Carolina, and he hit that 61 yarder to beat the Giants that year. He has been a staple. He has been consistent throughout his career here, but you're kind of seeing the injuries that with that kind of lost the game with the Giants not having a backup kicker ready with the Commanders game, and then you're kind of seeing a little inconsistency there, and it's just we're so surprised to see that from a Graham Gano and a Justin Tucker. But I want to go back to Lamar, man, because I got some beef with you, bro. Like you tweeted that you wanted Lamar to hit the DeVito celebration when or if he scores like Baker Mayfield did. Why are you worried about Lamar showing up DeVito? That's the least of Lamar Jackson's problems or the person that he needs to show up. Why are you coming up 95 with causing drama, bro?
No, man, I was kidding with all that. I was honestly when I saw Baker do that, I was like, "Whoa!" Like that's a little crazy right there. And look, obviously Baker, it was a cool little touchdown he had, and
Yeah.
he obviously felt it in that moment. But no, man, I was just joking. Lamar, honestly, Lamar would never do something like that. First of all, but he's been kind of interesting with the celebrations over the course of his career. Not really involved in as many of them. There was one last year against the Chargers on Monday night where Zay Flowers scored and he did a little bouquet toss. I think it was to Odell actually when Odell was still in Baltimore. And Lamar was like, that's the most trash thing I've ever seen. Like publicly called him out, Zay Flowers out for it. So Lamar is so locked in right now, as we talked about earlier. I don't think he's going to do any celebrating, regardless. If they go up by 7 late, if they're up by 30, whatever this game is, I don't think Lamar's doing anything. So I don't think any DeVito celebrations in the cards for Lamar this time around here.
Let's go to talking about Diontae Johnson, man. Like what's going on with that situation? Because I feel like the media up here is trying to make Malik Neighbors into this bad guy. They're trying to push him into some corner to get him to get some sort of sound clip, get him to say something about the coaching staff, the offense. Diontae Johnson is, I mean, a guy that y'all traded for to upgrade the receiving core. The guy is disgruntled. What's going on with that, man? Is that something you guys are worrying about as the Ravens are trying to make their push to go into the playoffs and maybe more?
Yeah, I think the thing that you worry about in this situation is will it be a long-term distraction? Obviously, this has really become a situation where it's not a good look for anybody, Diontae Johnson or the Ravens. Long story short on the situation is the Ravens, obviously, as you mentioned, traded for Diontae Johnson before the trade deadline, has only had 5 targets, a very minimal role on the offensive side of the ball in a contract year. So clearly he wants to kind of try to make this year maybe a fruitful year in the money department, get a
Yeah.
big contract off of it. The Ravens just haven't utilized him that way. And so Rashad Bateman goes down with the injury in the Philadelphia game, and Diontae Johnson refused multiple requests to go into the game. And apparently, even before this, he was in his locker during wins, being almost inconsolable because of how upset he was about his role and the amount of targets he was getting. Lamar Jackson, we talked about him being a leader. He was in his locker trying to cheer Diontae up. Baltimore suspends him for the game against New York, so he's not going to be available for this one. But at this point, you just kind of have to wonder what the next steps are, because if you let him go, there's an opportunity maybe he latches on with a contender that Baltimore maybe we'll see in the playoffs, like a Buffalo, Kansas City, one of those teams. If you keep him, do you just not play him at all? Because one of the needs for Baltimore going into the trade deadline was a depth type of wide receiver. Are you essentially back to square one now because you're not going to play Diontae for the rest of the year? Or do you reward him for the situation and say, hey, you refuse to go in the game. Here's 45% of the offensive snap share. So they're kind of between a rock and a hard place right now, because with Diontae, he's a very talented player. We know that. I think he, Rashad Bateman, and Zay Flowers make up a very good trio. But the Ravens have given guys like Tylan Wallace more opportunity, Nelson Aguilar more opportunity, and I'm sure that hasn't really sat well with Diontae, especially considering the player that he knows he is. So the Ravens knew it was kind of, I guess, a risk bringing him in after some of the stuff we heard about in Pittsburgh and even in Carolina. Yep. And right now it's proven to be a distraction, but hopefully they can kind of just cut that off and move forward without it being any more of a distraction.
Yeah, he's about to play himself out of some money, man. When you talk about the NFL, it's a what have you done for me lately type business. No one's thinking about him if he's suspended. No one's checking for him if he's on the bench. And then on top of things, you got an opportunity to get paid there in Baltimore, or let's say elsewhere, but no one's going to want to deal with that. No one's going to want to bring these type of receivers in. Like receivers are divas. They're not divas. They just want the ball. But when you cross the line and you won't go into a game, that means you quit on your teammates. Why would we bring this guy into the locker room, where our locker room is our sanctuary? We need all good vibes in there. I don't care if you got to burn sage or you do what you got to do, like your Kyrie Irving headed back to TD Garden. Like, the locker room is our sanctuary. And if you being an outsider, you weren't even drafted here. Yeah, we traded for you to add on to what we already got, to what we already have built in terms of a culture. And now you're over there sulking. He's got, 4 or 5 games in the playoffs to turn this thing around and to kind of clean up this image. Otherwise, a lot of people are not going to want to touch him, and he's not going to get that deal that he wants from another team. Let's move on, man, because before I let you wrap, we got to, talk about King Henry, 99 club on Madden. Same thing with Lamar. 2, them cornrows, bro. I don't know who told him to do those cornrows, but I'm a little worried now that he comes up in the MetLife stadiums with the cornrows and runs crazy. Do you think this Giants defense has any shot of stopping cornrow Henry?
Man, I think if Dexter Lawrence was there, my answer would have been a lot more geared towards potentially yes, but that's such a huge loss for New York in the middle, to where I think that the way that Baltimore's tackles have been playing, and even Tyler Linderbaum on the interior, I think that it might be tough, because what Baltimore has done, the offensive line has been a little inconsistent this season, particularly with their guard play. Patrick McCary and Daniel Falele right now are the question marks on that group. So if Lawrence was in there, he maybe could have feasted on those guys. But now with him out of the picture, and with Derrick Henry having the year that he is having, and maybe the Ravens wanting to work in some more designed Lamar Jackson runs based off of how Lamar has been talking all week and talking after the Philly game, I feel like this is going to be a big week for Derrick Henry. Now, there is an opportunity. I know the Giants last week had some success against the Saints in their rushing attack, but I just feel like with Derrick Henry, he literally is just a whole different problem to try to stop, especially when you get him going downhill, you get him onto the second level. The more yards he picks up in any specific play, the more dangerous that he becomes, because when you have a man that big moving at you that fast, becomes a lot more difficult for you to want to either stand in front of him. Sometimes you might just want to go low and try to see if you can trip him up that way. So I feel like this is hopefully going to be for Baltimore a game where they can establish things early on the Baltimore side of things. Because if they can do that, this is what the Giants then have to face. They either have to respond to that by putting guys up in the box. Maybe you sneak your linebackers in there, put a safety down there, try to see what happens. And then the Ravens can work play action off of that. Yep. Because if you have a successful run game, you're going to try to cheat down and try to stop Derrick Henry to get any little advantage you can. And if Lamar pulls that ball back and you have Mark Andrews running over a linebacker that just tried to come down and stop Derrick Henry, he can just fling that ball over the linebacker's head. Or if you have one-on-one opportunities with a guy like Zay Flowers or Rashad Bateman, two guys who are really good route runners, and you try to stack the box up, that can provide problems for you too. So if Baltimore can get their run game going, I think it opens up their offense a lot more. But if New York can stop that and shut it down, if the Ravens try to run play action with a failed run game, the Giants are going to be like, yeah, right. We've been stopping you all game. You're not really going to do that. And they'll have more avenues to defend the passing game. So I think Derrick Henry is a big key in this one, as he is each and every week, but for multiple reasons than just him picking up yards on the ground.
Yeah, I think the Giants' defense as a whole has their kind of hands tied behind their back when it comes to not having a Dexter Lawrence. You don't know if Bobby Okereke is going to be able to go. They're just down so many guys. Brian Burns is banged up. Kayvon coming off the wrist injury. And like you said, man, if the Ravens and Todd Monken, offense coordinator, can establish that run game early with Lamar, who's already thinking, all right, I got to run more. King Henry, who wants to run crazy and continue to push for league MVP. Like you said, young linebackers in Jeremiah Musow and Micah McFadden. You've got to step up. You've got to fill those gaps. And what makes the Ravens offense so deadly to me, I feel like, is having two tight ends who can work the seams and work that area right behind the linebackers when they step up on those play actions. And then, like you say, Zay Flowers on Austin routes. Nobody can run with that guy when it comes to man-to-man, and it's just hard to tackle when it comes to getting him one-on-one. So the Giants, as a whole, have their work cut out for them. It's going to be 29 degrees on Sunday. So you're hoping that the Ravens, one, play down to competition, two, make some mistakes, and three, Justin Tucker is still kind of struggling, I feel like, for the Giants to have a shot to not only stay in the game, but hopefully win the game. First win at home for this season. But like you said, stranger things have happened, man. That's any given Sunday for a reason. So, Kevin, tell the people where they can find you, man. I had a lot of fun with this, man.
Yeah, appreciate you having me. This was really great. You can find me over on the Locked On Ravens podcast, both in video form and in audio form. We're a 5-day a week plus more Ravens podcasts. So for anybody who's interested in the Ravens perspective on anything, particularly obviously with this Ravens and Giants game, you can find me over there. We'll be going live after the game. So for the Ravens perspective on what happens, be sure to tune into that. I also write over at the Ravens Wire and do some work at Bleacher Report, do some work for the Ryan Ripken Show, talking Ravens and Orioles over there. And you can find me on social media at Oestreicher 34.